Guys, we're back. If you watched the previous video, I just posted up. It was basically on just me trying to, in my own way, explain to you all what market structure is and how price technically moves. And just at the basic level, okay? So what I want to do in this video, and we are still looking at Euro NZD, is to explain supply and demand, because once you understand the anatomy of price in terms of price action and candlestick action structure, rather, it's also good to understand supply and demand. So let me just clear this chart again. And as always, if you are here for the first time, please like and subscribe, guys. I really appreciate all the support you give me, and I hope to continue giving you guys value. So that being said, so when we look at Euro NZD, and I'm on the weekly time frame, okay, we can clearly see that price has been on an interesting um, moving in a very interesting manner. But generally, if I was to draw a trend line for those people who use trend lines to trade, we can generally see that price has been shifting to the upside, right? That's on a weekly zoomed in kind of scenario. And basically talking about it from, let's say, 2014. But if I zoom out further, what I see is actually price has been shifting lower. Okay. So like I said in the previous video on market structure, introducing market structure, both biases are correct. One person can look at this chart and say, Euro NZD is shifting lower. Somebody else can be like, no, it's currently shifting up. If I'm to zoom in, I'll probably be like, okay, right now as we speak, price is shifting lower. But if let's say I go to a lower time frame, like let's say the 4-hour, I'll be looking at this again and saying, but you know what? I think, sorry about that, don't know what's happening. Sorry about that, guys. I think that no, price is actually shifting to the upside. Okay, and my anticipation is it will continue moving up. Now, guys, all those biases are correct, can be correct. Now, the key thing that we need to understand is, how do you trade? Okay, how do you trade? How do you then say, okay, do I buy or do I sell? Now, for me, I always say we always start with a higher time frame. So I like to look at the weekly. Don't ask me why, but I just like it. I used to look at the daily. I never used to go higher than the daily. But one day I discovered the weekly and I was like, wow, this just looks it makes my life way simpler. So, like we said, from 2015, obviously, looking up here may be, but maybe too far. If you're looking at 2008 time period, for some of you might be like, okay, that's too far. So we're just going to look at it from, let's say, even 2020. And yes, we are bearish, and zoomed out, we are bearish vis-a-vis 2009. So the bias is bearish, right? So I've just confirmed my long-term bias, okay? And okay, so how would so let me maybe try and obviously this is going to be in hindsight. Some of you might be like, oh, but you know what's happening. I really don't know. I'm trying to just show you based on what I understand about market structure and how I look at my entries. So I'm just going to look at it from, this is March 2021, this year, okay? And I'll probably dial down to lower time frames, maybe hopefully until the 5 minute. Now, but on the whole, we can see that price is actually shifting lower. We can see that on this February of 2021, this year, we kind of broke this low here. We took out this low here. and we also took out the 2019 low, and we also almost took out the March 2019 low, but we didn't quite get there. So we can safely say we took out this low and this low. Okay, so which low am I talking about? This low and this low. Okay, these are the two lows that we took out. And based on that, it's very safe to also assume that when we look at this candlestick for the week of Feb 2021, this was the probably the stopping of the price going down, or this, in retail language, you can say this was the support, the floor, and now we can begin to anticipate possibly there's going to be maybe a shift to the upside. Okay, why? One is because we took out previous levels, okay, previous lows, previous levels of what we say liquidity. And this candlestick formation up here, also showed me some rejection downside, okay? And on this particular week, we closed bullish, okay? Bullish because you can see definitely the red candles are going up and the gray candles are going down. So this was a bullish candle. And then the following week, the first week of March, we started printing a lower candle, okay? But as of this week, we are seeing that we actually closed higher than this candle. So for me, I'm still thinking we may be pushing to the upside, okay? Only because this previous candle, there was a major rejection, okay? So this week here, if you've looked at candlesticks, every time you see a strong wick, you can see there's a wick there. I mean, I don't have to explain this to you. I don't even need to know what the name of this candlestick is. But every time we see, this wicks, we see rejection, rejection downside, pushing up, rejection downside, continuing down, rejection upside, pushing down, rejection downside, pushing up. It's just what happens, common sense, okay? Common trading sense. So for me, I'm beginning to think, okay, maybe we are shifting to the upside. Now, what I would do, okay, would be to look at, okay, what would be the potential, because my bias right now is bullish, okay, but I would want maybe a confirmation. So maybe let's say I go on the daily. Now, when I go on the daily, I'm seeing a pretty interesting thing happening, okay? First of all, what I'm seeing up here is when we pushed and shifted lower, okay, the next daily candle on the 22nd of February shifted up, and the next day's candle on the 26th shifted up as well and broke some structure up here. So we have this 23rd February candle, this candlestick here, this bullish, very bullish candle, broke structure up here. So what I usually say is, when I see a break of structure anywhere, I just mark it out, okay? So this would be my break of structure, and I'll probably label it and say this is my B, not my BS, but my BOS on a light note. So this is my break of structure, okay? So when I see a break of structure, what I anticipate, because guys, what we know about price, remember in previous video, I talked about the anatomy of price. Price shifts up, okay, then shifts down, then shifts up, then and so on and so forth. So just going on this basic schematic, okay, because I'm in a bullish mood, I'm like, price has shifted up, okay, has shifted up, broken structure. Then what has it done? It has retested, and then it has shifted up. And what we see with this candlestick here is there was a rejection. So possibly it's trying to, it could come lower, or it could come back here and continue to the upside. So obviously this is just an assumption, okay? But what I see happening here is when this candle printed on the 5th of March, it pushed up, okay, found some rejection of sorts, which I'll explain right now, and then it shifted lower and began to print lower. Now, why did this candlestick shift lower? For starters, we need to begin to understand something called supply and demand. So what usually we have learned, or what I originally learned in trading at the very beginning, was I learned about support and resistance. Okay, those are the retail concepts. So for example, I can come here and I can print this line here, and I'm just going to change the color because it's kind of like, why is it green? Let's say okay, let me put a gray line there. So this is a support or a floor in retail language, meaning price came down, bounced off this, pushed up, and and so on and so forth. Now, at a particular point in time, okay, let me just delete this. Price came down, bounced off here, possibly the support, pushed up, and let's say we had a resistance up here. We also have another resistance up here. So most people, were this it makes sense what we were taught, that when price gets to a certain level at this level, because it respects a previous high here, we want to be looking for sells, and keep on selling and selling. But sometimes you'd find that this rule doesn't apply. So price can actually come here and break through. So it can find this zone here and break through. Let me look for a scenario where that happened. We can see that right here. Price shifted up here, found a resistance, and then came here. Someone would have been like, okay, price will come back here to this resistance and shift lower, but it kind of broke out. Remember, we're on the daily. So this move to the upside, okay, so we see this resistance here is about 80 pips. So if you started selling up here, okay, you would have been caught up in a drawdown, in a mad drawdown of 80 pips for like an entire day. Okay, so that's why it's not always safe to just trade highs and lows as we know it, meaning that you sell high at the highs or you buy at the lows. Okay, there are other factors that also will come into play, and those factors will help you to understand where price may be shifting to. So for starters, okay, we try and understand supply and demand. Okay, so I'm not going to be talking about support and resistance. I'm going to interchange that and talk about interchange that with supply and demand. But what do I mean by supply and demand? Now, supply, basically, if I look even maybe from here, okay, let me see. So when we look at this zone here, okay, we see that price printed, let me zoom in. There was a zone here. So let me just for purpose of you guys understanding and seeing exactly what I'm looking at. So price shifted lower and then stopped pushing down and then pushed up. Now, in retail language, you'd call this a support. But what I want you guys to begin to think about is this is actually not a support per se, okay? Because we then argue between this here and this here, which is a support, okay? Because if this was the support, how come it broke down and formed another support almost near this other one and kept on doing that? And you get what I'm saying? So what you'd rather want to look at is where the orders in the market lie. And most of the orders in the market tend to lie around supply and demand zone. So what is a supply and demand zone? In this case, we have a demand zone. So a demand zone here would be the last down candle before the move up. So what is the last down candle? The last down candle, if I'm to just take my rectangle tool, would be this. This would be the last down candle before the push up. Okay. Now this is on the very basic. Sometimes this can be the last. We can consider this last candle here as when we learn refinement, We can also consider this as a supply zone, okay, a refined supply zone. But for now, okay, at the very basic, this would be my supply. Last down candle before the push up. Last down candle, this one, before the push up, okay? We see another demand zone, last down candle here, before the push up. Now, someone would say, okay, Lillian, do I look at this one or this one? Now, what I just want you guys to understand is the basics. So I'm not going to go into which of the two you choose, but I choose this one because also it's what actually caused a strong impulse to the upside. Okay, so this last down candle. Now, that is a demand. When we're looking at a supply zone, it would be the opposite. So we're looking at the last up candle before the down move. Don't get confused by the colors. We can obviously see which candlesticks are moving up and down. So this is the last bullish candle or the up candle before the down move. So in this scenario, this is the demand zone. So let me change that maybe to color green, right? Okay, it doesn't show really. Maybe I make it deeper. Now you can see, but that's too dark. So let me just go back. And so we can see this. Actually, let me put this as red, or whatever. Yeah, so we can see this as the last up move, okay, before the down move. So this is our supply. So let's look for another supply zone. We could argue that this is also a supply zone. Last up candle before the down move, okay, here. Last up candle, and what we are trying to do is we are actually just placing it week to week, okay? Week to week. Some people do bodies, I do week to week. So another supply zone would be this one here. Could be, you could choose this one, could choose this one. You're still correct. Last up candle before the down move. Last up candle before the down move. Now, this is the basics. Now, if you understand just the basics, okay, this will really, really transform your trading from merely looking for buys and sells at support and resistance or at lows and highs. So now, for example, if I was anticipating a buy move, okay, I have to be cognizant of the fact that one of the things that we've already established on the higher time frame is that Euro NZD has been trending lower, okay? And we don't need to argue about this. We can see this with our naked eye. It's been trending lower. Sorry, I don't know why it's not drawing. We've been trending lower, okay? Okay, we've been trending lower. So that is obvious, okay? But now we are here. This is where we are at. And we're trying to figure out, okay, price has pushed up, then it has retested. And then now on this bullish move up, okay, what we've done is also, what you'll notice is there was a down move here before this up move to the upside, okay? So, but then on this candlestick that printed here, price pushed up and rejected. Why did it reject? Someone would argue it got to a resistance, either here or here or here. In this case, maybe here. But what I would want you guys to actually notice is that it actually rejected off of a supply zone. Last up move before the down move. And, you know, this is on the daily. If I was to refine this further and go on, let's say, a 4-hour, I'll probably be able to see a bit more. Okay, I'll probably be able. So let me go back to the daily so that I can put my I was on the weekly, right? Yes. So was I on the weekly? Yes, I was on the weekly. But this has come back to, I had actually printed this to this level. Where were we? trying to remember, we were here. Sorry, guys. Sorry, that's where we were. That's where we were. So I was just trying to figure out where we were. So I don't know. So it looks like we can't go on the, yeah, we can't. We can't go on the, we can't go too far back. So this is not helpful. We can't replay too far back. So let me just do this again. Okay. So what we are seeing, so maybe I'll only be able to, we have the weekly time frame here. We have the daily here, and price is pushing up. Now, this is, so let's look at this. Let's look at this at it from this point. Now, if you had seen this supply zone, this would have helped you better anticipate that price, there's a rejection point here. For some people, they would want to sell at this point here, okay, which is fine, or somewhere in between here. But just knowing that there's a zone here, you'd easily anticipate that price will reject off of this zone here, okay, and possibly reject and then, you know, come back to this demand zone. We have a down move before the up move, and then possibly push on to the upside and try and make highs. So let's see what happened, because I can't really go to a lower time frame because we are so far back in 2021. But I'll just play it out. So what do we see forming? We see this rejection forming. So price actually came back here and then came back to this demand zone. Okay, so this is the demand zone. I can make it green. Okay, and we can clearly see this was the supply area. Okay, now why did I, from this candlestick here, why did I want to buy? Okay, why did I want to buy? Why? Because price pushed up and broke structure. And remember, when it breaks structure, in our anatomy of price, we push up, we retrace. So I anticipated that from this break of structure here, okay, when we pushed up and broke structure, we would come back here, or we would retest. But you see, we didn't really get to this zone. So because we didn't get to this zone, when we retested, there was that push back into the zone, okay, from this area here, okay, and we see that we printed this candle, okay, and when we pushed down, there was a supply zone here. Now, if I was to go on a lower time frame, I would actually find deeper supply zones to actually trade off of. This is on the daily, so you know it's a bit it's a huge area or a huge zone. You'd probably want to dial down to a lower time frame. I can't do that. It keeps on doing that now. I can't do that now. Okay, go back to my weekly, and you know, so when you print that, we see that candlestick like that, and then we see the rejection, okay? We see the rejection play out here, okay? And then what do we see? We then see other candlesticks forming, and then we see this rejection happening over here. So for me, what I'm seeing is there's a zone here that, you know, there's a lot we can do in this zone. I'm gonna try and dial into an area where we can actually back test a bit more properly. but I'm hoping you're understanding. So at the end of the day, this zone here is a demand zone. Why is it a demand zone? Because we have an up move, a huge demand zone on the daily that is rejecting any continuation to the downside. Now, obviously, if I go on a lower time frame, I can refine this even further to ensure that we can even take buys from, let's say, even a lower area. But just so you understand, down move before the up move. And that's why I'm still trying to anticipate a push to the upside. Now, we already rejected this zone. Okay, we retested this zone. So I'm hoping that we can now break past, because we've done the retest, we can continue, because this would be ideally a push up, a retest at that zone, okay, and a continuation to the next point of liquidity. Now, what is liquidity, guys? For your understanding, liquidity is where you see equal highs or loads of retests at a specific zone. Okay, so in this case, this is where I would be anticipating price to get to. And that's why from this point, I am bullish. I'm not thinking of us dropping any further, because one, we are at a very strong demand zone. I can't go down because obviously the replay will not allow me to, because it's too far off a time frame. But this is where we are at. Okay, now we continue to print price, and as you can see, what happens as we continue pushing up, we are now retesting that same supply zone. Okay, that same supply zone, which becomes a demand zone. So last down candle before the up candle. And then guess what? There is another supply zone here. Okay, of course, the colors are interchanging because I'm using whatever. So price, I'm anticipating, will come up there, retest, and try to again take out this liquidity up here. So what I want you guys to understand, that price within the structure, okay, and I'm only using a daily time frame here. This is not how I trade. On the daily, I'll always want to go on a lower time frame so that I can get better entries, okay? But if I just use this daily time frame, the rule applies, okay? It's just that you would wait longer for price to play out the way you want to play it out. Because of course, if on the daily, this is a number of days, meaning you'd wait a whole lot of days before you can actually see price get here. I mean, what this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 days, almost a month. Okay, so this would be somebody who's like intraday, swing trading or position trading. I'm not a swing trader, I'm an intraday trader. So for me, this is too long, and that is why I would have to move on a lower time frame. But I want you guys to understand that price has moved from a demand zone to a supply zone, back to the demand zone, broken the supply zone, gone to a new demand zone, and may retest this supply zone on its way to take out liquidity to the upside. Okay, now, will it take out the liquidity? Okay, maybe, maybe not, because we are definitely in a downtrend at the end of the day. Okay, so that's how you're supposed to be thinking when you're trading. Okay, so you see what has happened in this zone here. It has rejected. Okay, now someone would be like, I want to come out. This would be my high. This is my resistance. Why? Because you've drawn a line up here, just so that I can show you guys why I don't trade resistance. Because if I put my resistance line up here, or I put my resistance line up here, let's say based on this high here, price didn't get there. It got into my zone, but rejected. So if I was waiting for it to get here, I would be in an unnecessary drawdown. But if I was trading from demand to supply to demand to supply zone and vice versa, whatever, my probability of hitting my target is higher. So I'm hoping that you guys are understanding what I mean by supply and demand. So this is a supply zone. Was a newly demand zone. And then when we pushed up, we came down, and then we even shifted and formed yet another demand zone here that can be tested in future on the way to the upside. As you can see, looking just at structure again, this is a high, low, high, low. So what are we anticipating? That we will form another high and maybe keep going like that. Whether we do or not, it's good to just understand what is happening, okay? So we're in the supply zone. What happens next? We are seeing the rejection off of the supply zone, okay? Do we continue rejecting? We then continue to push up. And then finally the rejection. Now, this is all well and good. Now, some people will be like, oh, this is a double, this is an M or a double top. Now, again, we are on the daily. So yes, this looks like a double top or an M pattern, but where do you know when to start selling? Because if you see, we started pushing up here, we kind of rejected. So somebody will be like, oh, let's sell, let's sell. And guess what? Price pushed up again, okay? And now you're thinking, okay, we are now forming let me show you guys. We're now forming another high resistance here. So now we're going to begin to sell, but price pushes past that resistance, doesn't even get to this resistance up here, and then drops. Okay, so I'll cover that refinement in a future video, but for now, I just want you guys to understand what supply and demand zones are. Okay, so this has traded back into the demand zone. Okay, let's see what happens. And now looks like it wants to break past that demand zone. Doesn't really quite do so. There's a bit of a rejection, and then we now see some consolidation. And so what would you be doing here? Would you be taking buys or sells? You see, that's another thing that you'd have to, obviously on a longer time frame, we know that we are in the buy area. We are in the area where a lot of buyers are, okay? But see what happens. You would be wanting to buy, but then it drops. Now that is also a class for another, for me to discuss in another recording. But what you need to know is, as it's breaking down, it's just coming back to this previous demand, okay? Now, if I was to draw the correct demand zone, what we see is that this is the last down move before the up move, and it has come back there, and it has respected that zone, okay? And there was a last down move here, okay? If I push it out like this, and I take this out here, we are seeing this last down move, up move, sorry, before the down move here. So this is a demand zone. So if you guys are getting what I'm saying, let me just clean this out. Price moves from one level of demand to another level of, let's say, supply, to another level of demand, and so on and so forth, rather than support and resistance. Okay, so I just wanted to do this video to explain to you guys what supply and demand is. Okay, and we can see, if we look throughout history on this chart, okay, we can see we have a demand zone here. Okay, sorry, a supply zone, forgive me first. Let me just hold on, guys. Let me refresh this page because my screen is kind of hanging. Let me just reload it. But basically, I'm just trying to shift us, because I know a lot of us trade support and resistance, and I want to kind of explain to you why I stopped trading support and resistance, because I would end up getting caught out on the wrong side of the market, which would then be very challenging in trading, because I would be getting knocked out all the time, in losses, in losses, in losses. But when I understood supply and demand, okay, and tied it with structure, what I kind of introduced in the previous video that I uploaded earlier, it kind of now began to make trading a bit more fun for me, because I was seeing I'm actually getting it, And that's usually what most traders want to feel like, okay, now I understand. Okay, so like I said, this plays out throughout. So if we are, let me zoom in. Okay, if I zoom in here, just looking at trying to identify the supply zones and the demand zone. So this is a typical supply zone, and we can see price came traded off of that and dropped. Then we can see we have another supply zone here, up move before the down move, dropped, and if I extend it, okay, this is a future point that maybe can be retested in the future. However, we can see when price pushed up, it came and retested in there and formed a more recent supply zone there. So this for me would be the zone I would be looking at price coming back in the future to test. So whatever happens, I'm anticipating that price will eventually come up here. Now, when I look at this zone here, on the demand side of things, we see price came down, and this is the last down move, sorry, before the up move, and we are seeing price actually retested that zone and formed other demand areas, down move before the up move, and maybe I would want to even use this particular down move before the up move, this one here, this candlestick here, because this candlestick is probably what formed this move up. When this down move happened, it didn't really break structure, but when this one happened, I think that's the one that actually, because someone would ask, so which down move before the up move or which up move before the down move do you consider? I usually consider the one that causes an impulse, okay? The one that causes an impulse. So in this case, it could be this one, but if I was to refine this and go to a lower time frame, guys, I would probably see some demand zone on this candle here. Okay, so probably I would make my demand zone this one, but for argument's sake, just so you guys understand, this is my demand zone. Okay, this is my demand zone over here, and yes, it was traded through, and again, I can't see lower time frame because I'm very high up. So what I want to do as a last thing to make this video make even more sense, and hopefully I'm not going on for too long, okay, bear with me. I want to go to where we are at. Let me go where we are at, not too far off. So maybe I don't want to go too far. So I'll go to November. Okay. Obviously, we can see how the price is. So in November, I think I can go. So this is the weekly. So remember, guys, we have a zone here that is a down move before the up move, and we can see that this was retested. Okay, so 2017, it was retested in November. Okay, and so what I would anticipate is for price to push up. That's a given, right? So because we are bouncing off of this zone, but let me just play out and see what happens. So we are seeing a shift on this candle a bit lower. Okay, now what is happening? Okay, now what we see, and I just want to now explain from this perspective. What has happened is there's an impulse on this candlestick lower. We have broken structure over here. Sorry, we have broken structure over here. Okay, and for some reason, so price shifted lower, retested this zone. Okay, so then we can see rejection, and it will look like it wanted to break to the lower side. Okay, we retested here, but then we started looking like wanted to reject the lower side. But guess what? There was a bullish candle here. Now, this bullish candle here is also, some people look at it as an engulfing candle. That's fine. But this is also a demand zone. So I can just maybe mark it out as my demand zone on the weekly. If I go on the daily, hopefully we can go through, I can refine this a bit more, okay? And what I can see even now is that we even have a more refined demand zone here. The last down move before this up move to the upside, okay? So I'll be anticipating that price will actually maybe break structure here and then come back here at some point and push up, okay? Now, we can already see some rejection here, and this can be explained by this last down move, up move, sorry, before the down move, this up move before this down move. And that's why price rejected here. But even if I was to maybe go on I can't, dang. Okay, I can't go lower. But I'll just go back here because we can see this, okay? Maybe go back to the 8 hour. No, I cannot go on the 8 hour. I can only do the daily. So fine, that's fine. Let's just use the daily. We'll use the weekly and the daily. So what we've seen is there was a bit of a rejection there, and then we broke past that high. And obviously there are reasons why we broke that past that high. Again, that's a video for another day. But what we can anticipate is that price is actually trying to make its way to the next supply zone, okay? Because again, anatomy of price, what price usually does is it pushes down, pushes up, pushes down, pushes up, pushes down. Then sometimes it breaks structure and then retest that structure and push up. So what we see here, when I say break structure, we broke this structure here, okay? Similarly, that's exactly what is happening here. Price has pushed down to this zone, and then we see a break of structure here. Now, when we broke structure, we actually retested a previous demand supply zone. Last up move before the down move, okay? And we can see it tapped into that zone here and then is rejecting, right? So then what do we see? We see that rejection, and this is a rejection of about 81 pips. Now, the assumption is maybe we want to come back to this demand zone or even come, to this demand zone down here and possibly continue, or we can actually break through, okay, that zone. And what we see, we are still rejecting that zone, but then we eventually break out and form another demand zone here. Last down move before the up move. So my anticipation is that price will eventually at a future time come here and continue to push up. Why? Because right now we are shifting structurally to a bullish bias. Why bullish? We came down, okay, and now are retesting, possibly wanting to retest this zone or this zone. But if I was to draw the direction, okay, we have this, we have this, we have this, we have this. So where did we break structure? We broke structure here. So chances are we either try and retest this zone and continue up, or we will retest this demand zone. If I was to go on a lower time frame, even maybe the 5 minute, 1 minute, I'd probably see some price action here that would show me potential demand zones that can be tested in the future, okay? But for now, for the purpose of this explanation, I'm keeping it simple, okay? And we see this is where we are at right now. Price broke out and retested the demand zone, guys, okay? And formed yet another demand zone here, okay? It's not yet fully formed. We'd have to wait and see if this candle will actually break through. If it does, okay, then we'll begin to continue to see the bias to the upside. And that's why, guys, I've been saying that, yes, Euro NZD is trending down. However, when it broke structure here, it started printing a bullish bias. So we may attempt to retest these lower levels, but we are generally looking at buys, because if I was to then look at it from, let's say, just this zone here, okay, we can see this high, okay, structurally on a bigger time frame kind of thing. This is the high, this is the low, this is the high, and possibly there'll be a low here, and that's why this move is looking very possible. Okay, so there's this, this. Okay, so whether this plays out this coming week, this is actually something that can happen. This high could even be up here. Okay, as long as price doesn't print below here, we are in bullish territory on this. If I was to draw my trend lines, what we learned in retail trading, okay, this is a channel that's possibly shooting up. If it respects our bias, we are on an uptrend channel. Okay, so guys, I hope this kind of explains what supply and demand is. And what I'll suggest is just try, and this is very basic. I'm not even trying to be complicated. This is very basic, but what I want to tell you guys is, if you add structure, okay, to looking for supply and demand zones, and then now, possibly in a future video, I'll probably now discuss how to refine those supply and demand zones so that you can now get refined entries on lower time frames. In short, that would be your trading algorithm. Like, that is what you'd use to trade profitably. Okay, so if you liked this video, please smash that like button, and also, as always, subscribe if you haven't already. I just want to end it here so I don't elongate this video too long, but I hope to see you soon, guys, and continue to explain structure and supply and demand, and how to trade off of those structures and supply and demands in a very profitable, or in a highly profitable way. So thank you, guys, and see you soon.